Hello, Ron. Bumblefoot Thal here, and you are watching the Carr Stereo podcast.
Hey friends, Steve Brown here, and you are in my home studio, which we're going to be doing a grand tour with my good friend Terrie Carr on the Carr Stereo podcast. Come on, let's go.
Yo, what's up, y'all? This is DMC in a place to be, and the only place for you to ever be is right here rocking and rolling with the Carr Stereo podcast. Rock.
So it is the Carr Stereo podcast, and it is the Industry Insider edition. Every so often, I love to get my industry friends together, and we Zoom and we talk about music, and it's always amazing. I am with my great friend, Gary J., who is the founder, president, CEO, and be-all and end-all of Landshark Promotions. Gare, welcome to the Carr Stereo podcast.
It's so good to be here.
Tell everybody a little bit about what Landshark does, because you are such a big player in the music industry. You and I have worked on so many promotions with so many incredibly cool bands over the years.
So Landshark is celebrating a 20-year anniversary next year, which is going to be very exciting. And, you know, when I worked at record companies for years and years in New York City, and I always wished that there was like this, you know, team of people that I could bring on board that would just kind of like fight the good fight with me, that I trusted, that I believed had my band's best interest at heart, and had really rock solid relationships to kind of help further, you know, their agenda. And when we started Landshark back in '07, you know, that was kind of the idea. We wanted to be that company. We wanted to be that ally that bands and managers and record companies could count on to help further their agenda, certainly at radio, but, you know, in other facets of marketing as well. And, you know, over the years, we've just been very fortunate to have a client roster that I think is really just remarkable. We've been a part of breaking some, you know, massive bands from Five Finger Death Punch to Sleep Token, and just it's been a really, you know, career-wise, this has been absolutely the most interesting adventure of mine. And I'm just proud of the work that we've done and continue to do, and I get to work with my friends, which is also a plus. So, you know, it's been great. It allows me to talk about music all day, and honestly, there's not much I'd rather talk about. So
what do you think the most fun promotion that you and I have worked on together? We've done some really cool shit. There's no doubt about it. Off the top of your head, just give me one. It doesn't have to be the most fun, but what is a memorable one? I can think of one.
I love the parking lot parties. I thought the parking lot parties were so kind of innovative. It was such an opportunity for listeners not only to have kind of that, you know, VIP private concert experience, but also a chance to meet and greet their artists. Like they actually had a moment of connection with the artist that, you know, you can't go out and buy, you know, and having their local radio station provide that opportunity for them, you know, was a real sort of bonding experience between radio station and the listeners. And then to have our band in the middle of that, every band that we did a parking lot party with would come out and just be like, let's do more of those. And I'd be like, well, there really aren't a lot more of those out there. This is a very unique radio station and a very unique
Very unique. We were very unique indeed. Yeah, I'm
those
glad that you
were
mentioned
really
that
special. I always loved Puptoberfest and the times that we got to bring artists to come and do, you know, acoustic sets for Puptoberfest. That was fun to see them play in front of people who, you know, had probably in a lot of cases never heard of these bands before. But, you know, by the time they walked out, they were taking selfies with them. They were getting autographs. And I felt like it was exposure to a much more passive audience, perhaps, than some of these artists get a chance to play in front of.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we've had some fun times. I remember me, you, and Chickenfoot on many occasions, and that was fun.
I keep hearing Chickenfoot are there's a lot of chatter about them trying to maybe do something again, whether it's record again or play some shows again. Honestly, you've got, three-quarters of Chickenfoot out there now touring with Sammy as his best of all worlds
Yep.
experience.
Yep.
So if they could just get Chad Smith into the mix, and call it Chickenfoot, um, I'd love to see that music played live again. I think those two studio records were just so remarkable. And whether you're a Sammy Hagar fan, you're a Joe Satriani fan, you're a Van Halen fan, those records, there's something for everyone on there. And I was very proud of those records.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. And you were behind all those records. I poured a cocktail, by the way, for our hang tonight because you and I are going to do something so fun. We are talking about an amazing decade of music, and that is the 80s. But we're not just doing 80s. We are doing criminally underrated 80s. Now, you and I were just sort of starting to come up in the biz as the 80s were trailing out. And there were so many incredible bands and so many really cool songs that were getting on the radio in the 80s, but not necessarily always the big giant 80s hits, not always the Bon Jovis or the Culture Clubs or all of these artists that were making all this noise. So we both compiled a list of some underrated 80s, and we're going to kind of go back and forth a little bit and talk about why we think these songs were what they were. I'm going to start in 1981 with a band that I never really quite understood because I don't know if it was a band or if it was just the guy, but I'm going with one of my favorite ballads of all time, and that is Marillion and Kaylee from
Ooh.
1981's Misplaced
Ooh.
Childhood. That record was a smash everywhere. But here, I don't even think it got into the top 50 on the Billboard charts. I think it kind of peaked at 74. They had that big guy named Fish, I think that was the singer for Marillion. He didn't really look any kind of part of anything. But that song and that video, like literally thinking about that song right now, I could cry because it's such an emotional song. Do you remember dancing in the stilettos in the snow? And it's such an incredible song. I don't know how that was not a monster hit. Do you agree or disagree?
I remember, Marillion being very sort of Genesis, Peter Gabriel era Genesis-esque. That the singer certainly wore makeup and costuming, and kind of I felt like played different characters in different songs. Um, and they were also very progressive. They were kind of like another band of that era, Saga, who were really brilliant musicians, but they wrote these kind of lengthy compositions that were complex. They weren't very easy radio songs. They weren't very, formula verse, chorus, verse. And that probably kept their audience a little more fringe.
Yeah.
But Marillion certainly, I remember, also had this beautiful imaging. All of their album cover art was so striking looking, and they got just just a little bit of MTV back in the day. Not a lot, but just enough to like be like, oh yeah, I think I know who that band is.
Yeah.
And that's sort of my experience with Marillion. But I remember Kaylee being that one video that would just come on in between, the big hits of the era, and it was kind of like, well, what's all this now?
Yeah. Yeah. And definitely one that stays with you. That's still one of those songs that whenever I hear it, it takes me exactly back to the first time that I heard it. So Marillion, Kaylee, definitely on my list for underrated 80s, 1981, the year. You're up.
All right, well, I'll put my glasses on so I can read my own notes here.
Okay.
That's one of the pitfalls of growing older. So I'm going to start also in 1981, and I actually brought some props with me for this.
You are the vinyl collector. I've got to let
So
everybody know you have everything.
I don't have everything, but we've got a lot, and I decided to go through my 80s section and pull out my picks. So I'm going to start right here in 1981 with Taxi.
I love them.
I thought this band, first off, I didn't realize this band was not American. These are actually Brits. And these guys had a a a flicker, a moment in of time where they were starting to get some real traction. They were opening for the biggest bands of the day, for the Police, for Loverboy, for the
I didn't know
Motels.
that. That I did
Um,
not know.
they had songs on a couple of the big 80s soundtracks like Weird Science and The Secret of My Success with Michael J. Fox. But honestly, they really had one hit that kind of caught any traction that you and I have talked about. The magnificent I'm Leaving, which, to me, it still sounds fresh today, even though this song is 40 plus years old. Um, Little known fact, Randy Jackson of American Idol fame played bass on the track, was never a full band member, but played on a lot of tracks on this record. And I just, this is one of those where I had the vinyl, I had it on cassette, and I will still play this and just go. The first side of this album is a no skips, absolute, just banger after banger.
I love it.
Taxi.
Taxi. Excellent. All right. I'm going to go on to a band that people probably have heard of from the 80s, but I thought the song was such a monster, and I don't know why it wasn't of Bon Jovi, Motley, like all that status. And that is Hurricane. And the song is I'm On to You. So catchy, so amazing with that Kelly Hansen vocal, Robert Sarzo in the band playing guitar, Rudy's brother. The video was very cool. It had video vixen Bobby Brown in the video, the cherry pie girl.
Oh, was that
And
her? I didn't realize that was her in the video
yeah,
for that.
she's
How
in
about
that.
that? All right.
Yeah, she's in that. She's a little plainer in the video, believe it or not. But yeah, she's in that video. And the chorus, the na 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 na, it's so catchy. It's so infectious. And it's like that borderline hair metal pop. And I just don't know how that was not a bigger hit than it was, because I thought it was one of the most infectious, feel-good songs of 1988.
Honestly, the first stanza of the lyric was brilliant. The first words out of his mouth, I'm not
Not
one
one
to
to
give
give
advice.
advice.
But
I'm
girl,
not
you're in
one.
trouble and you better think twice.
Yeah,
Like
and his voice
you're
is so
already in. You're
powerful.
already into that song in 2 seconds.
Yep, yep, yep. So Hurricane, I'm on to you. Definitely on my list for underrated 80s.
Absolutely. All right. Well, now that we're into the more heavy, rock side of things, um, I'm gonna go here. We're gonna go to Kansas City, Missouri, and break out Viper. This album, this album to me, I like you said, they were in an era where a lot of bands kind of had a similar look and a similar sound and a similar vibe. This band, I just thought, did it better than a lot of bands that became much more popular. They really only made this one studio record and then an EP, and that's it, and kind of disbanded. But I just, this album to me was Sunset Strip, glam, sleaze rock at its absolute peak. Christy Black on lead vocals.
Yeah, he had big moppy dark hair.
They all kind of had the big hair action.
Yeah, I kind of
going,
remember the video for that one kind of quasi single that they had.
Jackie Fox on guitar was doing, the two-handed tapping.
Yeah,
and
cool.
They had all of the elements that bands from that era that got much, much bigger. I think they just probably, their record company went belly up after their first record or second EP, and it was kind of like that was it. We've heard that story how many times where bands were riding high, and then their company ran out of money and went bankrupt and upended their
many
career.
times. We heard that too many times
Yeah.
for too many of these bands that really were on this trajectory. I think it was a 50-50 shot in the 80s. You had 50%, of being really talented, and then the other 50 was luck. And
Yeah.
sometimes you just got shit canned for stuff.
It really is. I will tell bands that now, that even now today in 2026, there's still a huge element of luck and timing, and it's something you have no control over. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to just put yourself out there, put your music out there, be smart and strategic about it. But there's luck and timing, and sometimes it works for you, and sometimes it don't. Sadly, with Viper, it never did. But this album, I listened to this album as a teenager incessantly, and honestly I still break it out now and go, it's a tremendous record. If you've never heard the Prepared to Strike album, go listen to Viper Prepared to Strike. It is it's a moment in time, that's for sure.
I love it. I love it. All right, I'm shifting gears now because I'm moving over to the 80s new wave side. And there were a lot of those new wave bands that were really super talented and just kind of got clumped into that new waveness. The Fix, definitely one of those bands. And this band that I'm going to talk about right now is a band that I absolutely love, and that is Talk Talk.
Oh yeah.
There's a song that they have from 1986, because I think it's 40 years old this year, called Life's What You Make It. And the vibe on that song is like no other. I noticed these songs too. Some of these songs showing up in these Netflix shows or whatever. I was watching the show about the new FX show with JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette called Love Story, and it's very infectious to watch. You start watching it, you got to watch all of them. And the music in it is incredible. But Talk Talk's Life's What You Make It is such a vibe song. The singer for the band Talk Talk, Mark Hollis, had this really unique voice that kind of got down into your soul, and he sounds like nobody else. And I think that they were one of the underrated new wave bands of the 1980s. So I am throwing Talk Talk, Life's What You Make It on my list. I think all of the 80s new wave fans will be on board with me for this one because it's one of those incredibly underrated songs that definitely should have been a higher charting song and in everybody's Walkman.
I felt like, my experience with Talk Talk was very much the videos that MTV would show. So it was the song Talk Talk, and then It's My Life, which later
Beautiful
got a
song.
second, bite of the apple when No Doubt covered it. But I'm with you. I think Life is What You Make It is a little more it's a little more under the radar.
Oh, it takes me away. It just takes me someplace when I hear Life's What You Make It. Do, 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 do.
Just for the record, I'll be doing zero singing in this podcast.
All right, you're up. You're up.
All right, well, I'm going to join you on the new wave train. So I'm also going to go back to 1980 and break out the first album by New York City's Poly Rock. If you're of a certain age and used to watch Nickelodeon as a kid, they used to have a show called Live Wire. Remember Live Wire?
I loved Live Wire.
Hosted by that guy Fred, who did all the funny voice effects and everything. They used to have live bands play. They had the Ramones play one episode. And they had one episode where Poly Rock showed up. And Poly Rock were basically 4 synthesizers, 1 guitar. No live drums. Everything was programmed. It was incredibly minimalist. It was devoid of fashion. It was almost everything that the 80s everything the 80s became. It was stark. It was kind of dark subject matter. Legendary avant-garde producer Philip Glass produced this record and played some keyboards on it as well. They never really had any real fame. They released 2 studio albums and an EP before they kind of went away. But this first Poly Rock album on RCA is really an amazing record. If you're a fan of even like Lou Reed, Velvet Underground, this album is so worth checking out.
I always thought of them as like a stripped down Talking Heads. No pomp and circumstance, but still that gritty feel of what the Talking Heads were kind of about.
Much less funky than the Talking Heads. Like you couldn't really dance as much to poly rock, but it was just so kind of icy cool, and you felt like you were on the pulse of something that was very interesting and new and different. And I remember as a 10, 11-year-old kid watching this and just realizing it was like nothing that I had experienced before. And I just, this album meant a great deal to me then. It still does now. So poly rock.
I am going with a song that I used to hear on the radio. I used to hear it on my old station when I was in junior high, and it was a song that always stuck with me. 1980 is the year, so I'm just getting it in. And that is Shooting Star. And the song is Last Chance. It was one of those
Wow.
big, epic, when the stranger came to town.
Wow.
I think they were the first band, American band, to sign to Virgin Records. They were it was a very interesting, epic saga kind of song where you had a sort of, those songs that are 4 songs in one song.
Hmm.
And that's what that was. Hey, your life is, and then it would have this big instrumental in the middle, and then this big chiming chorus at the end. And I never understood how that big epic saga song was not a bigger epic saga hit, because it was one of those songs that drew you in, and the passion in that song was great. The songwriting was great. The musicianship was great. And definitely one of my favorite 1980 songs, that is Shooting Star and Last Chance.
It almost could have been like something Jim Steinman could have written, where it was
No doubt.
very bombastic.
Today will be
and
your last chance to believe in yourself. Your last
Shooting Star.
chance. Right? That's
Deep tracks, TC. I love it.
deep tracks.
Deep
So I
tracks.
had to go Shooting Star, Last Chance for my list of criminally underrated 80s.
All right. Okay, well, let's see. I think we're gonna go to my hometown of Philadelphia.
I'm excited because I
And
think I know who you're going to pick.
well, I have a couple actually.
All
But
right.
we're gonna start right here with this. This record meant the absolute world to me as a teenager. True story. I was there at JC Dobbs on South Street the day they filmed the Change Reaction video. I think I was 12. I had no business being there, but I was there.
You were getting ready to ride the escalator of life.
Listen, that was growing up in Philly in the 80s. The Hooters were really the biggest one. They were the one that really broke and became as big as everyone said they were gonna. Robert Hazard's story is a little different. Robert, little known fact, in 1979 recorded a demo, never actually put it on a record, but recorded a demo of a song called Girls Just Want to Have Fun. We all know what became of that song in the 80s.
I remember hearing that. I never heard the demo, but I remember hearing that. That's right.
You can go on YouTube, you can go online, and you can hear the demo. It sounds very different. It's exactly the same lyrically. The arrangement is completely different. But that was kind of Robert's first taste of fame. Story has it that he was playing a show with his band, and Kurt Loder, speaking of MTV, who at the time was a writer for Rolling Stone, came in, saw the show, was very taken by the show, and wrote a feature in Rolling Stone.
Wow, I did not know that.
That kind of got him some interest enough where he was able to record and release this EP of songs under his own imprint at first. That featured, of course, Escalator of Life, which did become peaked at 58 in Billboard, according to my notes here. So not a top 40 hit, but 1982 was certainly,
got a little bit of MTV love. I remember the Escalator of Life being on MTV, and such a brilliant, when you think we're riding on the escalator of life, we're shopping at the Human Mall. Like,
he was so
concept.
cool. You never saw him without a lit cigarette.
Yes.
And to me, he was just the epitome of, he was cool without trying to be cool. He just had absolute natural charisma, an absolutely gifted live performer. Growing up in Philly, we had two rock radio stations, WMMR and WYSP,
Yep.
who would both play a great deal of his music. So, at least locally, he was very celebrity. He signed to RCA Records in 1984 and released an album called Wing of Fire that I also love, that was really, unfortunately, not quite a big hit. Um, his career kind of free falled a little bit after that. This is also a very personal artist for me. One of the absolute highlights of my career when I worked for Rykodisc was to sign Robert along with Jack Verhoeven to his final record contract.
Wow.
He released an album for Rykodisc called Troubadour in 2007 that was so different than his 80s music. It was very much a folk album, very acoustic, stripped down, beautiful. It really showcased his songwriting. And this is kind of as an older gentleman where he kind of felt he was musically. Sadly, Robert passed in 2008, but we still have the music. And honestly, this record for me will forever be a classic, front to back. If you've never heard this EP, I highly recommend you find it and take a listen.
Yeah, some great like new wave infused storytelling with
Yes.
Robert Hazard, because he was a really great storyteller and there were so many of those great stories behind the songs. I'm going to pick from my list somebody who is kind of a little bit in that vein too. And this song really inspired me to want to be on the radio. There were two songs I think that inspired me the most to want to be on the radio. Obviously, I'm a Rush geek, so Rush Spirit of Radio would be the first one. The second one was from Gary Myrick and the Figures, and it was called She Talks in Stereo, and it's from 1980. Best known, of course, for the Valley Girl soundtrack. A lot of people know it for that. But Gary is such a talented guy. I'm actually friends with him on Facebook. I don't know how that came to be, but I don't know who friended who first, but I did send him a private message and just say, look, She Talks in Stereo is such an important song to me. It means everything to me, and it really influenced my entire radio career. I like now looking at pictures of his chihuahua because that's what I mostly see on his Facebook page. But there is no song from the 1980s that moves me more than that song. And I will sit through Valley Girl, which, trust me, I don't have to sit through it. I love that movie. Not the remake, the original.
Not the remake.
Oh, the remake is terrible. And
Shameful.
when Skip goes to Susie's mom's house and it's playing in the background and she's by the pool and she's going, I have a tip for you, plastics. And you can hear, this Gary Myrick song. She talks in stereo. It's a very sexy scene. It's very Mrs. Robinson, obviously, because, they're referencing The Graduate. And it's a perfect song because it's really such a sexy sounding song, and it makes the radio sound sexy, and it made me feel like being somebody on the radio would be kind of a sexy job to have. So, okay, phone sex operator on the radio. I guess being on the radio would be better. So Gary Myrick and the Figures, such a great song. She Talks in Stereo. So that's one of my picks.
All right, well, now I'm going to go out of sequence because you brought up the Valley Girl soundtrack, which, again, you and I both love a great deal. I'm going to bring up another artist from that soundtrack, and that is the one and only Josie Cotton. Born Josie Jones. This 1982 record is absolutely stunning.
Love her. Love her.
Obviously the Valley Girl soundtrack. Not only is she three songs deep on the soundtrack, but plays live in the movie at the high school prom. But certainly, as a fan of that movie, I sought out this record. And Convertible Music by Josie Cotton, which does feature Johnny Are You Queer and He Could Be the One and all the songs from that movie. I don't know why Cyndi Lauper is Cyndi Lauper and Josie Cotton isn't, because to me, Josie
agree.
Cotton was cooler, a little less shtick and a little more
Yeah,
substance,
yeah.
if you
She
will.
was a rock star. She was such a cool rock star. She had that great edge, and she had balls. And I loved the way Josie Cotton too used to grab the microphone. You know, our good friend Zuzu from Soraya did shows with Josie Cotton not that long ago, and I remember just being so impressed by that. Like, you're doing shows with Josie Cotton? She's like a legend.
She still plays shows. I don't think
Yeah,
she's made a record in a really, really long time. But just one of those like we talked about, like why does one artist become massive and one doesn't? Josie Cotton honestly should have been much, much bigger, more popular, but this record is such a wonderful time capsule. It's just fun. It's bubblegum. It's just everything that was cool about the early 80s on one record.
yeah, I agree. I agree. Oh, where do I go now? Do I go more little hair bands, or do I? I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go a record that was one of my favorites from 1987. Very underrated record called House of Dolls from a band called Gene Loves Jezebel. And they had a song on that record that in 1987 I wore out called 20 Kilohertz. It was just everything to me. And I was such a fan of the band. I kind of put them in the almost in the pocket of being a not as edgy cult. And they had some really, really great songs. The Aston brothers, John and Jay. And I think Jimmy Iovine was involved in the production of the House of Dolls record, along with Peter Walsh. I don't think that he clicked that well. I remember hearing with the Aston brothers. I think they were difficult characters. But there's a song called 20 Killers. She's gonna burn, burn, burn. She'll do it again. And I loved, like, wow, there was all this like wild screaming in the middle of these Gene Love Jezebel songs. And I thought they were a severely underrated band. The Aston brothers still go out. They still do shows. They still tour. They had other songs, Jealous and Motion of Love and some other cool things. But I thought House of Dolls in 87 and 20 Kilohertz were 20 Kilohertz should have been a massive radio hit. It's just so incredibly catchy, never was. And that album to me is completely brilliant. And I was obsessed with that band.
So now they still tour as two separate versions
Correct,
of
because
Gene
they
Loves
don't like each other
Jezebel.
very much. I don't think.
I've seen one of them, and honestly, I couldn't tell you which version I saw, but I saw
I
one
think Jay
version.
toured more, so you might have seen Jay. I saw Jay. I never saw John.
Okay, there you
Yeah.
go. But
But I love them. I still
that
love
is
them.
some sibling rivalry right there.
Oh,
Like, yeah,
man.
I'll show you. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, now I'm going to go back to Philadelphia, and I'm going to keep it a little new wave before I start breaking out some more of the heavier stuff.
Okay.
But this is another Philadelphia act. It's an act that we both have a bit of a personal connection to. So this is 1987. This is Pretty Poison, and the Catch Me I'm Falling album.
Catch me, I'm falling.
This
Catch me now.
was
Brilliant song. Oh my
just
God.
this was what pop music is supposed to
The
be.
best.
It's clever, it's hooky, it's fun. It's actually it's the arrangement of this song was actually really kind of ahead of its time, way cooler. The keyboard player was using patches and samples and technology that was still evolving. And it made this record sound so of the moment. Like in 1987, this just sounded so fresh and so new. The title track, of course, was featured in the John Cryer motion picture Hiding Out, which would never have gotten made today, by the way. So you're hiding from the mob as
As a high school student.
as a high school student dating one of them. That's anyway, very problematic. But
I love Jade Starling. I think she's also of the Josie Cotton ilk, where I don't know why she wasn't a bigger star. She was so beautiful and so charismatic, and I love her in that video, and she's dancing, and she's got the cool kind of Madonna-like clothes on. And I remember I had started my FM radio career at WPST. We did a big WPST bash, and Pretty Poison was one of the bands that was playing, because the station was from that area. And I was just mesmerized by watching them. I thought, oh my God, they're just so great. And I thought she was just such a rock star. I love that song. I love that song. That song makes me so happy.
They were incredibly polished and professional, and signed to a major label, to Virgin Records, and it just seemed like everything was happening for this band until it wasn't. And I
Yeah.
honestly don't really know. They've had other hits on the dance chart since then, but certainly nothing to the extent of Catch Me I'm Falling. The band's guitar player, Louis Franco, used to come in 1987. I worked at a music store, guitar store. Shout out to the Music Barn in Feasterville, PA. And Louis Franco would come in to buy strings or buy picks or buy, whatever it was that he needed. And he was just a cool dude with giant hair. He looked like Steve Stevens.
Yeah, they were almost kind of like a rock band, but not. Like, they looked so cool, and they really looked like a rock band of the time.
Yeah, Pretty Poison is one of those, just, again, you scratch your head and just go, I don't know why it didn't become a global phenomenon, but this record is just magic. It's just so much fun. Highly recommend. 5 stars.
All right. I'm going to grab another woman who I thought was going to be a big star. And that is Fiona Flanagan out of Phillipsburg, New Jersey. I remember the first time in 1984-ish, maybe. I don't know the year exactly. 4 or 5, maybe 5, where I heard Talk to Me from Fiona. And again, it was another one of those cool kind of sexy songs. I think she had 5 albums out. That was her debut. She ended up marrying the producer Beau Hill, and then a lot of people know her from doing Your Sex and Me with Kip Winger.
I didn't know she married Beau Hill. That's
She
interesting. How
married
about
Beau
that?
Hill, and he did her second record, Beyond the Pale, and he produced that. But I thought she had so much potential on that first record. It was, I think Reb Beach was on that record, I believe, doing guitar. And I loved the video for it, and it was so, talk to me. I can't understand why you won't talk to me. And she's like freaking out in the song, and she looks really beautiful, but not overdone. She looked like the girl next door, this pretty beautiful girl next door. And I just thought she was an amazing rock chick and had the potential to be such a rock chick. And then it sort of imploded for her too. And it never really happened. I don't think anybody knew where to put her. Then they were trying to make her an actress. She was in Miami Vice, the episode with Ted Nugent, where she was Little Miss Dangerous, and they were playing that. So it was kind of like, I think everybody was probably pulling at her. Ironically, I got to tell you a funny story. So I did a female rock show called the Queens of Noise Show. And who do I get an email from one day? But Fiona. And Fiona had heard about the Queens of Noise show. She was living in a town in New Jersey and hit me up. And what do I say to her? I'm like, I don't believe this is Fiona. So she sends me a selfie of herself. And she looked exactly like she looked in 1985. And she was in her driveway or something. And lo and behold, it was Fiona. And I was more excited by that than like all these artists that I've interviewed over the years, because I was literally like, oh my God, Fiona is listening to this Queens of Noise show that I'm doing. Like, how exciting is this? This is great. This is amazing. So yeah, I love that song. And I actually love that record. I loved her second record, Beyond the Pale too. She had a song called Living in a Boy's World. That was always so cool to me. So yeah, Fiona's on my list for underrated 80s. I thought she was a giant rock star of the day.
I felt like she was very like punky, spunky. Like she was almost Avril Lavigne before Avril Lavigne. Maybe a little more rock than Avril ever got. But I just remember her being just so energetic, and just the level of energy coming out of that video. When you would see it on MTV,
so
it was just
beautiful. She was stunning, just absolutely stunning. She had her own style and her whole own thing going on. So, yeah. All right. So who you got?
All right, I'm gonna stick with the ladies here, and I'm gonna take you back to 1988 and break out the Misbehavin' album by Joanna Dean. Man, this she had a voice somewhere between, Janis Joplin and Bonnie Raitt, and she was Sass Jordan before Sass Jordan, and she was just this cool, rock chick in black leather pants, and had plenty of attitude. And I thought Kiss This and Ready for Saturday Night just could have been much, much bigger. It felt like she had that like brief MTV sort of moment. Um, and she got to open for a bunch of bands, open for AC/DC, and um, you know, she had like Southern charm, but had like New York rock grit. True story, the Kiss This video was filmed at the old Roxy in New York. And if you look closely, you'll see a very young Jim Belushi as the bouncer in that
Oh, you're
video.
kidding. I didn't know that.
A
I
little
did not know
celebrity
that.
sighting there, uncredited. But I don't know. I don't know whatever became of Joanna Dean other than this record. And this is one of those records that if you're lucky, if you're a record collector, you might find a cheapy copy somewhere in a dollar bin. Grab that thing, because this record is just chock full of goodness. It's just, again, it's a really good time. It's kind of no frills rock and roll, like you're in a sweaty club, but her voice was just elevating. She could just absolutely sustain notes and had that rasp, and it was just effortless for her. I did a little digging on her on my own. A fun story: Joanna Dean actually sang backup for James Brown as an 18-year-old.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That's wild.
Yeah.
That is wild. I felt like the women of that era really had a tough time because there was maybe room for a Lita or room for a Joan Jett, but there really wasn't a lot of room for women. There's still not a lot of room for women, but there's way more room than there used to be. So I don't think talent could sustain anybody back in those days because the doors just closed in your face. It didn't matter what you did. It was just like, yeah, we already have a woman, so we don't need you. We don't need you. And especially somebody like her who was not all style and was mostly substance.
Right.
That unfortunately is going to be a strike against you anyway, because they want you in leather pants with your boobs hanging out rather than having the voice of a Janis Joplin. Like, your boobs matter more.
Well, I mean, she had all of that, and she had the big hair. I mean, she definitely had they styled her the way that you felt an 80s female rocker should be styled. But yeah, for some reason, this album honestly, didn't become a huge hit. And then honestly, I sort of lost track of her after that. But I will still break this out and just remark to myself, like, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Joanna Dean could have been much, much bigger.
So I'm going power ballad now. And I have to go back to 1982 for one of my favorite power ballads, and probably one of the first power ballads that I really remember hearing. And that is Vandenberg.
Oh, wow.
This burning heart of mine.
Wow.
Burning Heart. Adrian Vandenberg barely cracked the top 40, but an incredible song, especially the beginning of that song with that the way that the guitar is kind of mixed. It's just very beautiful. There's an acoustic feel, and then the song just kind of builds and builds and builds. And I think I probably cried to some junior high school boyfriends during Burning Heart from Vandenberg, because it just has that, does it feel the same way? It's just such a beautiful song. And I think the beginning of the power ballad as we knew it.
And then Adrian went on to, of course, join Whitesnake in 1985, 6,
Yep.
somewhere in there, and recorded that album that had "Here I Go Again" and "Still of the Night" and all these monster.
Oh, that's Still of the Night video with all of that stuff going on in that video with everybody's like Rudy slapping the bass, and it's just like this wild, like, what is everybody's kind of Coverdale's up on the thing, and it's like something you just never experienced before. It's like, what is going on in this video? It's wild. It's like everybody's having sex with their instrument. That's how I viewed that
Yes.
video.
Yes.
Everybody is having sex with their instruments.
And I saw Whitesnake opening for Motley Crue in 86, 86. It was 86. And I'm not sure if I know Viv Campbell was in the band. I'm not sure if Adrian Vandenberg was still in the band at that point.
Yeah,
He
they
played
had
on
the
the
ins and
record.
outs. It was like John Sykes and Viv and Adrian. I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, but boy, I haven't thought about the power ballads song in a minute.
I
So
loved Burning Hearted. I
deep
still do,
tracks,
and I still
TC.
listen to that. I still listen to that song when when I'm lamenting over something, when my heart is broken. So yeah.
All right. Well, then we're gonna get rock then. If that's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna go to 1989, 89 in New York City's Circus of Power.
Oh yeah.
So
Unique band, such a unique
man,
band.
this
Wow.
was this was the Cult. This was the Doors.
Monster
This
Magnet.
was this was just so freaking cool.
Yeah.
And one of the first records when I was at my college radio station and got to pick out what I was going to play on my show, I played the Circus of Power and Motor and Call of the Wild. These are such great songs. They've continued to make music. They broke up for a while. They got back together again. I mean, I think they've got a much deeper catalog than I'm familiar with. Um, but this self-titled record is a masterwork. If you love just big sounding rock, but it had a little bit of that like Doors-ish shaman-esque quality to it, gritty like the Cult. I just can't recommend the Circus of Power album enough. Big record.
And a little sprinkling, just a sprinkling of stoner. Just
Oh
a
yes,
sprinkling of stoner in that Circus of Power. I
absolutely.
think that
Which
was
is
kind of the beginning of that. The beginning
probably
of
what
that.
worked for me in 1988 very well. So absolutely.
So I'm going to pick, I think, for my next one. Oh my goodness, because I have so many cool ones. But I think I'm going to go for my next one, a band that I loved and I was so obsessed with. And I don't know which song I'm going to pick because I may do two. But I'm going to Canada. And the band is Honeymoon Suite. They were
Yes.
so brilliantly produced
Oh
by Bruce
yes.
Fairbairn and, of course, New Girl Now. But I really liked the record, The Big Prize. And there was a song on The Big Prize called Feel It Again. But I
Feel it
loved that
again.
whole record, top to bottom. Top to bottom, to me, that was a record that I listened to with my bestie, who's still my bestie, Phyllis. And we listened to that in the summer of 1986, just over and over and over, because that record, bad, I think it starts with the Bad Attitude is the first song that it starts. And you want the big prize, you got your bad attitude, and Feel It Again was really the kind of quasi hit. But Honeymoon Suite, very underrated band. Never understood why they weren't the Bon Jovi, that Bon Jovi was, because I thought that they definitely had the songs, and love that band and love both those songs.
I'm glad you brought them in. I consider bringing that first album on my list as well. I think they were just honestly they were. I hate to say this, they were not as good looking as Bon Jovi, and ultimately, I remember seeing those videos on MTV, and it almost felt like they were trying to feature the band without getting too close up because they kind of knew what they were working with. So they had a lot of shots where they were pulling away and kind of like in the 80's when everything was such a visual medium. If you didn't look the part,
Or
you
have
had
a front man, if you were kind of a little more nameless and faceless.
it
Yeah,
was
you
tough
didn't really
sledding. It
stand a
was tough
chance.
sledding, and
Yeah.
that brings me to my next band, who honestly, again, this was a record that meant everything to me in high school. And to this day, I still put this record on a very huge pedestal. And it's from Seattle's TKO and the album In Your Face that came out in 1986. 86? No, 81. 81.
81.
81, my bad. They disbanded in 86. This album was really spectacular. So they had an album that came out before this called Let It Roll. That was a much more kind of just rock album. Great songs, a little bit of a lineup change. When they recorded this record, they moved in a much more heavy metal direction. They brought in a young 18-year-old whiz kid guitar player named Adam Brenner, who later became known as Adam Bomb,
I
who
remember
wrote
Adam Bomb.
who
Sure.
wrote most of this record and played guitar on it. Lead singer Brad Sinsel is one of my favorite frontmen of all time. Not only as a lyricist, his phrasing, the way that he would attack certain syllables and emphasize and twist a phrase. Uh, this record to me is just so powerful and brutal, but awesome. And just the album cover is certainly of its time. But I honestly can't say enough about this record. They made a follow-up album called Below the Belt. That's also worth picking up, worth checking out. But the In Your Face album, I had a cassette of this that I had on my Sony Walkman, and I would traverse the hallways of my high school from class to class with this record blasting. And yeah, TKO never had an MTV hit, never had any of the spoils that a lot of the 80s rock bands had. And I think it's really a shame because this record is just truly, it's spectacular.
Love it. Love it. God, we're coming to the ends of our lists here.
Yeah.
I think I have to go because I have a bunch and some of them are not going to make the list, but I gotta go blue. I gotta get Blue Murder in here. 89. So I'm coming in under the wire, for the 1980s, but Jelly Roll is a song that is just, again, it's 4 songs in one song. What a band with John Sykes, who was everything. I mean, just what a guitar player, a phenomenal lead vocals on the Blue Murder stuff. Gorgeous beyond belief. I mean, he looked like, I don't know what, like just this Viking model. And you're like, this is the guy in the band. He's beautiful. Carmine, of course, Tony Franklin, just a really incredible power trio. And it starts off as this country down, 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 and then it breaks into this, there's all these hooks. Every quarter mile is a hook on this song. I don't need no doctor. I don't need no priest. And then, love can break your, then it breaks into that whole beautiful, the sky opens melody with love can break your heart. And then the guitar solo at the end. I mean, it's just brilliant. I don't think there's ever been a song like that song. That is just one of those songs. And I would play that on the radio. And for those that knew it, would be like, I can't believe you're playing this, the greatest song ever. And for those that didn't know it, would be like, what was that song you played at 120? Because it just is such an impactful song. I don't know how that was not a monster hit. That whole record is great. Valley of the Kings and Blue Murder, and the whole record is great. I think they put a second record out, but it just nothing really ever happened.
No, didn't Tony I guess that was before, right? Was the Firm, I think, predates Blue Murder.
Yes.
Like the Firm was 84, I think.
Yep.
So Tony went from the Firm to Blue Murder. I actually saw Tony a year or two ago. He's been playing bass in Lou Graham's solo band.
Yeah, he's incredible.
So he's just, a big fretless bass that he would play.
But those super groups are always hard. They don't stay together for a really long time and everybody's always doing something else. And, I think John Sykes was an interesting character to work with. Definitely a genius, but it's such an underrated guitar player and he just had everything. Beautiful frontman, great vocalist, great lyricist. Blue Murder, Jelly Roll, definitely on my list.
All right, well, besides Blue Murder, you and I are big fans of the power trio paradigm as a whole, whether it's Rush or Triumph. I'm going to add one more power trio to my list, and that's the Mighty Zebra. Boy, oh boy.
That first record is top to bottom, every song.
From Long Island to New Orleans, this is a band that's got inducted into 2 Music Hall of Fames, both Long Island and New Orleans. I remember seeing the Who's Behind the Door video on MTV, and that was it. I needed to know everything about this band. This album is stunning. It's another no skips album where every song is really great. Um, but Who's Behind the Door was just so, it was unlike anything I'd heard. Um, Now, in hindsight, I recognize the influences, certainly the Zeppelin influence. There's absolutely some Rush influence in there as well. What's actually most remarkable, this band first formed in 1977. So this year they are celebrating their 50th anniversary, and they're still touring, and it's the same three
You guys,
guys.
yep. Yep.
It's Randy, it's Felix, and it's and Guy Gelso. It's the
Yep.
same three guys out there doing it who played on this magnificent record. So if Zebra comes to town, go see them. You can't believe that they can still do it at this level, and they absolutely can.
Yeah. Oh, I loved that record. Oh my God. Tell Me What You Want is still one of those great, I love the way that song comes in, where it's just his kind of vocal, almost cold. I've been wasting my time. Oh,
I'm
just
with you with
incredible.
power trios. Just there's the thing about a power trio is when you're one leg of a tripod, like there can't be a weak link.
Yep.
There can't be.
Yeah.
Every leg's got to be rock solid. And Zebra, much like Triumph, much like Rush, much like Blue Murder, every guy in here was really important, and every guy really held their own and brought a lot to the table. So, Zebra.
Do we have like one left each, I think?
Well, that was 10. I brought an 11th. I'm going to cheat and
All
bring an
right, let's
11th
do
in.
we'll each do one more.
All right, you first.
I'm just trying to figure out which one of my one more. Um I think I might go with a song which I think should be one of those songs that everybody is always singing in their daily lives. And that's a band called World Party.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they had a record out called Private Revolution and a song called Ship of Fools. Carl Wallinger is a brilliant storyteller and songwriter. And Ship of Fools is one of those songs that you could listen to now, and there's no dating on it whatsoever. It should be an instant classic. You should still be able to hear it on radio stations around the country, and you don't. And there's a line in that song that I love more than anything, and it comes towards the end of the song after he goes through the whole chorus, where he goes, all aboard, and it's just such a brilliant song. I love everything about World Party. I love everything about that Private Revolution record. And I think he's one of the great storytellers of the 1980s and beyond, and certainly doesn't get the credit for being an incredible, incredible songwriter. So listen to World Party Ship of Fools and punch it into your everyday life, how you live right now, and think of all the people that are around you sometimes. And you're like, I don't want to sail with this ship of fools. I got to jump off. And it's a really, really incredible song and certainly very, very underrated.
I would suggest recommend it if you like Elvis Costello and the Attractions. Um, Certainly, he had World Party had an XTC ish kind of vibe to them. Um, but just yeah, Tears for Fears. Like if those are bands that you love and you don't know World Party, you should get to know them. I think Carl passed away a year or two ago. But
Yep.
definitely dig into his catalog on, you know,
Brilliant.
on YouTube, on your streaming platform of choice. But there's a lot to dig into there. Great
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
All
Great
right,
stuff.
I'm
But
gonna go one more.
you get the final vote tonight, Gare.
That's a lot
See,
of pressure.
I love talking music with you, and me and you text, sometimes daily about cool songs and cool, movies and stuff. So deep diving into any era with you is a pleasure for me because I love chatting music with you.
Same, honestly. And look, the '80s were just a fun decade of music. It was a fun time to grow up, but
How
certainly,
lucky were we?
yeah, I mean, musically, it was just so all over the place, and you could listen to in some cases, a radio station and hear something like, World Party, and then 5 minutes later hear something like, you know, Zebra, Motley Crue, or something completely different. And it was an interesting time when I felt like the lines were much more blurred, and artists were able to kind of fit seamlessly in between categories. They weren't so pigeonholed. Radio wasn't as tightly formatted as it is now. The rules were different. You could get away with a lot more back then, I feel like. And maybe because there was no internet, there was no permanency, and there was no accountability. So artists would push the envelope more, and I think it made for better art, quite honestly. All right, so my last one is from 1988. It was my freshman year in college, and I remember this record being a really important record for me. It was, as much as I loved heavy metal, and I was a metalhead in the 80s, I was a punk kid too. And I loved a lot of punk rock. But I thought what made this band so special was where a lot of punk rock it was very violent and screamy and super aggressive. This was punk while keeping it close to the vest. It was icy cool. It was almost a little bit removed but it had a sneer to it that I really identified with. And that is the Godfathers and the Birth, School, Work, Death album. This entire record, again, to me, is skip free. But even just the picture, look at these guys. They didn't look very punk rock. They're wearing suits. But boy, this record is so full of attitude and just bristles with it's a real indictment of blue collar culture. It's a real indictment of capitalism, and sort of the homogenization of everything through corporate mentality. This record was punk without trying to be punk. And I think that's why I loved it so much and still do. Um, they made other records that were also really cool. Some of them went a little more new wave than this record, but I always go back to this album. And even just the opening track, the title cut of this record, to me is just an absolute stone cold classic. Birth, School, Work, Death, The Godfathers.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely perfect. I remember beginning of my radio career, one of my favorite songs to play on my night shift was that song. It electrified the
So much
studio.
energy and,
So much
and vibe
attitude.
and
Yeah,
yeah.
attitude. Just all attitude. Wow, this was a really fast hour. We zipped through probably 11 songs each, and we could have easily gone 20 more each.
I had a whole B list of records pulled just in case. So
I know I had a bunch too. I mean, I just, a couple of mine, I was like, I'm not, we'll save them for next time.
there
And
you
it's
go.
always such a pleasure talking to you. I'm always so grateful to have you, is a part of my wheelhouse, a part of my life. And it's really nice to have you on my podcast, my new Carr Stereo podcast. And
It's the pleasure's all mine, TC. Thank you so much.
And you also have to let me know what's going on with Landshark. What can we look forward to with some of the cool Landshark artists that you're going to be working with?
Landshark is crazy busy right now, and that's fantastic. There's so much good music here in the first quarter of 2026, including a brand new Atreyu single.
So good.
There is new Black Veil Brides music coming. We're still very much involved in the Rob Zombie album that I'm very excited about that. Dayseeker, which is just absolutely blowing up. And
Congratulations on the success of Dayseeker. Such a cool band.
we're thrilled to see the evolution. Honestly, it's been really kind of remarkable seeing them grow from this band that had this incredible cult following, this pretty passionate cult following, into something that's gone much more mainstream. And honestly, the numbers on it are just extraordinary. And this record is just really, I think, a landmark record for not only them, but people will look back on this record the way we're talking about these records 40 years later. I'd like to think they're going to talk about this Dayseeker album as being a very, important record of its time. I got a couple other great things coming out. Some bands that we're excited to work with. I'll drop some names out there. There's a new Bullets and Octane record. This band's been around for 20 plus years, and have made maybe the best record of their career. And then a really new band out of Austin, Texas called Bridges Ablaze. Keep an ear open for them. Very cool stuff. So yeah, we're super busy, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Gary, thank you so much for being with me on the Carr Stereo podcast. Always a pleasure. Criminally underrated 80s. Nobody that I enjoy talking music with more than Gary J. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, TC.
Mwah.
Don't forget to like this podcast and subscribe to the Carr Stereo page on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Rob Moorhead. TC and I will see you next time.